Alright, so welcome back to Islebound. We are going to be talking about attacking for this video in more depth. Okay, so let's say I'm gonna attack Sun's Rest. I need to have an attack power of 5 in order to attack Sun's Rest. Let's just say these are the only two I have to attack Sun's Rest. One Sea Serpent and one Pirate. Now, if I was able to roll a 5 or higher and a 4 or higher, I would have enough attack strength to basically attack Sun's Rest and it to be successful in the equation. Okay, but let's say, for the point of argument, well, first of all, I have 2 dice here, right? Because I only get to roll 2 dice because I only have 2 here. If you want to roll more dice, obviously you're going to need more Pirates and more Sea Serpents. However, there are other ways of getting more dice. If you have a worker, or should I say, if you have a crew member who has this dice symbol above his head, you can decide, and before attacking, so meaning before you roll the dice, you can choose to exhaust this crew member, putting him below deck, assuming he's not already exhausted, to grab another dice for the roll. So that's one way you can get more dice for rolling without actually having more of these to increase your chances of increasing your attack power. So you get an extra dice. That's really cool. So that's one way you can do that. And if you had more of these villagers here that have that dice symbol, you could obviously do it again if you had another one. So there's no limit. There's only a limit to the amount of crew members that would have that symbol that you'd get to do that. But then regardless, let's just say you still don't quite have enough in order to have enough power to take over Sun's Rest. Remember, Sun's Rest requires an attack power of 5. So let's say I rolled a 5, which is enough for the 3 attack power for the Sea Serpent, but I was only able to roll a 1 and a 2, okay? So I only rolled a 1 and a 2. I put the 2 there, and obviously I don't utilize the 1 because the extra dice was for exhausting this crew member here who had a dice symbol above his head. I therefore only had an attack power of 4. So you're like, oh, that's not enough to take over Sun's Rest, obviously. Because I need to have 5 to do so, and I only have 4 to do so. Well, then there are 2 options of possibilities, okay? 2 options where you can increase that likelihood of you having enough power to attack. One of those is you'll probably have some wood in your supply. So if you have some wood, at this point, you are then allowed to re-roll a dice by spending 1 wood to do so. You can re-roll a dice. And if you don't have a successful roll, then you can pay another wood to do it again and again and again. For each wood that you pay, you can just keep re-rolling the dice until you have a successful roll, or until you run out of wood. So that's one way you can increase your chances of having enough attack power in this situation, especially in order to take over Sun's Rest by attacking it. There is one other way you can do so, however. You can also choose, let's take the logos here. Doesn't really matter who I take. But you can also choose, after the fact, that you don't have enough attack power to take over Sun's Rest, or any isle in particular that you're attacking. You can choose to injure one of your crew members. So I can choose to injure my logos, so he would go down into my hold of the ship, and he would go down, instead of going down exhausted like this, he would go down like this, and he would be injured. And then by doing so, you get to add 1 additional attack power. So only 1, and that would be enough for 5. And then you would have a successful attack. So those are the options in attacking. You can injure your crew members. You can have maybe possibly some crew members to add dice to the roll. You can just simply add more Sea Serpents and Pirates to the equation to have more dice in the attack roll. And then, of course, you can utilize your wood as well by getting to reroll some dice. So those are some of the ways that you can do so. Now, with that said, let's say you were still not able to have a successful attack, or you decided you did not want to injure a crew member in the process. for instance, because you don't have to. You don't. It's not a have to. If you fail miserably and you don't want to injure a crew member to do so, for instance, or don't have any wood or don't want to use wood, you don't have to do so. But let's say you do fail. When you fail an attack, you are going to lose one of these of your choice. So, like, for instance, I could decide I lose the pirate. I don't get to use this pirate anymore. But any additional other cards I still have, I would get to keep. I would get to keep them, and I wouldn't lose them. So let's say I lost the attack. I had 3 sea serpents and 1 pirate. I can choose one of these to discard, to lose, and then I would still get to keep these 3. So there's still some, you don't completely lose everything if you have a failed attack. Okay? Now, let's say you have a successful attack. Let's say I attacked. Now, let's say I decided to attack with 1 pirate, 2 sea serpents, or actually, let's make it 3 sea serpents. Let's say that's how I decided to attack. I decided to attack with 1 pirate and 3 sea serpents. And I had a successful attack. I took over Sun's Rest. Well, one of the things that happens is when you have a successful attack, everybody used in the attack is now discarded. And so I would lose my 3 sea serpents, and I would lose my pirate, which means I would be having to go back to Viz Isles again to get more of these. That's why you may not necessarily want to utilize every single sea serpent and pirate you have, especially if you have a lot. There is such a thing as overkill, and in this game, overkill might be wasteful, for sure. Now, there is a big benefit, though, to attacking. When you attack Sun's Rest, you get 5 money. You get the spoils. That's the spoils of Sun's Rest. You get 5 money. That means if you were to attack a higher bannered, like higher banner here, like Farwold, for 12, you would get 12 money for doing so. And then having obviously a lot of money means you're going to be able to buy buildings much faster and obviously, end the game much sooner. This game is going to require you to either use diplomacy or attacking quite a bit in order to end the game. If you decide not to do either of those functions, a game that maybe takes 2 or 3 hours to play could end up taking 12 hours all day long to play the game because you refuse to attack or you refuse to use diplomacy. So utilizing attacking and diplomacy is something you're definitely going to do, and you'll end up doing both, at least both. You'll definitely attack at least once in a while, because after all, some islands can only be attacked. This isle here can only be attacked. This isle can only be used with diplomacy. So you are definitely going to want to attack some as well. But at least you're not attacking actual players. Now, if this is controlled by an opponent, so let's say Manta here has Sun's Rest, and I was attacking Sun's Rest, I would actually need an attack power of 7 in order to take Sun's Rest, because there's always going to be 2 more up of the actual number. So if I'm going to attack, I would need 2 more. That's how that's going to work, if I want to take it from him. But then he would lose his cube, and I would get to put my cube there because I had a successful attack. And, of course, I would still get the spoils of just 5. I wouldn't get the spoils of 7. I would still get what is still on the banner for spoils. But that's what you do when you take somebody else's base. Now, when you visit an island, you can actually end up visiting the same island as another player, or same isle as another player. That's perfectly fine. When you're visiting an isle that's owned by a player, however, that's where it's different. If you can't pay them a coin by visiting their isle, or you can't pay the other types of taxes in order to visit an isle that they control, Manta controls Sun's Rest, I don't have any money, I can't come here. I cannot come to Sun's Rest. That means my ship's going to have to go somewhere else. So if a player has taken over most of the isles, you're really going to be limited to where you can go if you have no money. You're going to be spending a lot of your actions just simply hunting for treasure, which isn't very lucrative in this game compared to everything else that you can do. So you're definitely going to want to use influence, and you're definitely going to want to attack other isles for sure. Because if you don't, your opponent's going to take advantage of that for sure. And of course, you'll be here all day playing this game if you don't actually attack and use diplomacy on these isles. Okay, so we've basically talked about everything that you could possibly do for attacking. Now let's go over influence, because they're somewhat similar in some respects. Okay, you won't use the dice, however, for diplomacy, but you will be using your influence track for diplomacy. Okay, so let's say get a few colored cubes here. Let's say I wanted to take over Underval here, and its diplomacy is 7. Okay, here's the diplomacy for Underval. I'd have to have 7 influence to take it over. So I would have to have enough cubes on here to remove from to make it 7. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'd have to take 1 off for 2, another 1 off for 2 more, so that's 4, another 1 off, well that makes 6, and I'd have to take another cube off to make 7 influence. So you have to have 7 influence. You might have to have almost the same amount of cubes on the influence track, almost, unless everybody is doing this. Then you're going to have some higher numbers, obviously. But you're going to have to take off some cubes for sure if you're going to want influence. So in the beginning of the game, you're not going to have any influence, so you're not going to be doing this. Attacking might actually be something that happens before influence, because it's easier to get sea serpents and pirates, because there's so many isles you can visit to get them. While, on the other hand, there's only a couple of isles that will increase your influence, and they're only going to increase it by 1 per visit. While, on the other hand, an event, however, might be more helpful. If you have an event that you've completed, when you complete an event after you've paid what it takes to complete an event, and you also have to be at the isle as well, you get 1 influence for completing this event. But some will give you 2 influence. Some will give you 2. That one will give you 2. This one will give you 3. So some of these will give you some influence, and some of these won't give you very much at all. So it might be possible, depending on what the event is and how much influence it's going to give you, you might be able to use diplomacy sooner than attacking, but not likely. Now there is one other thing that you can use in order to have enough influence in order to take over an isle. If you have a crew member, so like for instance this lizard folk here, he has this symbol on him. Okay, you'll notice this symbol is here. This is the influence track. That means that this lizard folk, he has some influence. And so, if you are visiting an isle and you need some more influence in order to take over an isle using diplomacy, you can choose to exhaust this lizard folk, assuming you have him and he's not exhausted, and you would get 1 more influence. So that means if you want more influence by exhausting crew members, you're going to have to exhaust more than 1 crew member to get more than 1 influence by exhausting a crew member. But that is another way that you'll get influence. So that's basically the only way you're going to get influence, those 3 ways: visiting certain isles, completing events, and exhausting workers, crew members who have that symbol above their head. So getting the lizard folk and this boar folk is definitely worth doing. So we've talked about pretty much everything that could possibly be on a worker. However, there is one other thing that some crew members will have. You'll see that this one has a wave symbol, and so does this fish folk. If you have a crew member that isn't exhausted, but is sitting on your deck ready and active, for every extra crew member you have means the amount of times you can move your boat. So you might only be able to move it 2 to be in the beginning of the game. But if you have a crew member that has the wave symbol, well, now you can move the boat 3 spaces. If you have 2 of those crew members that have it, then you can do it 4. But that would always be the max. You would never be able to move your boat more than 4 spaces at a time. So that's basically what that means. So we've talked about all the symbols on these characters, these crew members. We've talked about diplomacy and how it works. We've talked about attacking, how that works. Now, in the next videos, let's talk about all of the different cards. And that will pretty much cover almost everything here. Okay? See you guys in the next video.